Well, here we are. I'm Matt. This is Movies All the Time. And as you might have guessed, I love movies. Now for a brief history. Like most people, I went to the movies a lot as a kid, especially with my grandparents. Shout out Grammy. Wouldn't be here without them. That led to movies becoming a minor hobby for me. Would keep up with most major releases in theaters once I got to high school and college. This is about the time that MoviePass was a thing before I tanked their entire business model personally, going 6-7 days a week. That was the happiest time of my life, if I'm being honest. Then in 2019, a close friend introduced me to this little app called Letterboxd. You may have heard of it. It is the greatest app I've ever used, the greatest app to ever exist, in my personal opinion. But what began as a line here, a paragraph there, turned into full-blown essays. There was even punctuation, you name it. But I can only write so much on the internet. My girlfriend can only pretend to listen for so long. And even my movie-loving friends can only philosophize about the latest Fast and Furious movie before they get sick of me. So I have decided that talking into the blank void that we call the internet was the healthiest outlet for me. And I'm sure it will be great on my mental health. But I just love movies. So I needed another outlet to talk to and something to waste even more money on. Let's get into the story of how I watched 100 movies in 100 days. So, if there's one thing you should know about me right off the bat, it's that I love going to the movies. Cinema, multiplex, whatever name you got for it where you're from, I love being there. There really is no happier place in the world for me than the inside of a theater as the lights are beginning to dim. Not even Disney World can beat that feeling.
That indescribable feeling we get when the lights begin to dim.
Now, out of the 100 days that I watched a movie, 28 of them I spent inside of a movie theater. Now, the beginning of the year is often known for being a bit lackluster when it comes to theatrical releases. As an avid Letterboxd user, though, I look forward to the beginning of the year because I see it as a great opportunity to pad the left side of my curve. There was one exception to this beginning of the year mess, and that was John Wick Chapter 4. But we'll get to that later. There were some older films that were screening at theaters near me. I got to see Vertigo for the first time at a little indie theater in Baltimore. Having recently been to San Francisco, I thought it was really cool to see just the different ways that Hitchcock photographed that city, and it made me reminisce fondly about my time there, and also made me really want to go back. The movie was just incredible. I really loved it. I mean, who doesn't, right? And in typical Q1 fashion, there were plenty of just horrible, horrible movies. Laughably bad, some might say, like Marlowe, Megan. Just saying their names is already giving them too much exposure. I'll just leave it at that. When 2023 began, I made it a goal to watch a movie every day for as long as I could. Going into the year, my longest streak was 8 days in a row, and now my streak is a little over 160 days in a row. Still going strong. There are definitely some nights that I probably should have just broken the streak and called it quits. I am a substitute teacher, so my early mornings were particularly painful some nights when I should have foregone a film, but I ain't no quitter, so I kept it going, and it's still going. There were a lot of sequels coming out early in the year as well as summer that I wanted to be fully up to speed for, so that meant watching quite a few franchises and binging multiple entries to a series in a row. That led to me having plenty of movies to pick from. Besides, if there was a serious time constraint, I always had a couple short films in my watch list, a bunch of Scorsese shorts. Ari Aster directed quite a few that I wanted to watch as well. And so I always had plenty of options. After 100 days and 100 movies, I can definitively say the most gratifying experience I've had was the time that I spent with Martin Charles Scorsese. With Scorsese's latest picture, Killers of the Flower Moon,
releasing exclusively at 3rd of October 2023.
the powers that be decreed this year was the year of Marty. So I set out to finish the rest of his filmography. I've seen probably about half, of his movies before the year began. There's no better way to build anticipation for a movie that you're looking forward to than to go through that director's filmography and watch all of their movies in release order. I did that when Dune came out, and I watched all of Denis Villeneuve's movies. I watched every single one of PTA's movies. There's a theater that had a little retrospective, and I got to see all of those in theaters before Licorice Pizza came out. And I'm also planning on doing it again later this year with Christopher Nolan before he drops Oppenheimer in July. It really is just a blast. This meant that I got to revisit a lot of personal favorites like Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street, a classic. And then there were some that I'd only seen once that I just really, really loved watching, like Raging Bull and Casino. The one Scorsese picture that really floored me on a rewatch was The Irishman. Upon first viewing in 2019, I found The Irishman to be a solid entry into Marty's filmography. To me, it just seemed like another great mob movie. You know, that's really his bread and butter, so he can't really do wrong with those. But rewatching it this year, I was just absolutely floored, and seeing it in the bigger picture of his career and just really realizing that it truly is a masterpiece and might be his best movie yet. I actually love The Irishman so much this time around that I went out and bought the book that it was based on. I Heard You Paint Houses by Charles Brandt, and flew through that thing in like a week. It was fantastically written, just great investigative journalism on Charles Brandt's part, and it really made me appreciate the adaptation that Marty made all the more. I actually loved it so much that I went back and watched The Irishman again only like a month later after finishing the book, and forced my friends to sit through the 3.5-hour movie that they did not want to watch, but I loved every second of. Now, the most exciting part of this watch through was seeing the dozens of movies that Marty has directed that I had not seen before, and it made me realize how diverse of a director he is, and just how really incredible that short Italian man is. I just love him so much. Cape Fear stood out as Scorsese's scariest and freakiest film to date. It was really unnerving, just straight up creepy all around, especially De Niro's performance as Max, even if his accent was extremely goofy, but I think that might have been the point. The King of Comedy managed to make me laugh a lot, even if it was also extremely creepy and just unsettling. It really chilled me the way it explored celebrity obsession culture, and really interesting considering it came out in the 80s. I feel like that's a problem we're really dealing with a lot today. And, you know, of course, Marty, way ahead of his time as usual, addressing that issue over 40 years ago and really nailing it, honestly. So I hadn't seen any of Marty's Unofficial Faith trilogy before the year began. Kundun was the most visually striking, I think. Just a gorgeous movie, front to back. Silence really took the gold as the best of the three, in my opinion. Andrew Garfield continues to prove that he is just one of the greatest young actors working today, and he really should have won that Oscar over Will Smith. I'm still a little salty about that. Marty may be known for his plethora of gangster movies, but did you know he's also directed movies about billiards, about the struggles of single motherhood, about the difficult life of a first responder? I didn't, but after this watch through, I'm hitting it. His filmography has got to be one of the most diverse I've ever seen. Just as impressive is the fact that his filmmaking is only improving in his old age. The same can't be said for all filmmakers. You know, Clint Eastwood, he should have retired like 20 years ago. So my first encounter with the Rocky franchise was actually with the first Creed movie, directed by Ryan Coogler. That was actually a very memorable theater experience. I remember seeing it with two of my coworkers at the time, and the training montage was just so incredible. My friend was getting up in the theater, shadowboxing along. I mean, it's just very infectious filmmaking. It's very hype, energetic. It stands as the best Rocky movie after watching all of them for the first time in preparation for Creed 3. Creed 1 stands above the rest, in my opinion. After watching all 9 of them, now there are 9 out, I realized that the best part about these Rocky movies are the infectious energy that they pour out. They just elicit such strong emotions through the characters, through the fights, of course, through the interpersonal relationships between the trainer, the trainee, the family. I mean, Adrian, she's such an iconic character. I don't know how I missed out on these movies for so long. Personally, I was a little let down by the first Rocky movie. I didn't know anything about it going into it. I mean, other than the stairs. Everybody knows about the stairs. I was very taken aback by the gritty style and sort of documentary adjacent filmmaking. It was definitely a surprise. Equally as surprising was that I had no idea that Sylvester Stallone actually wrote all these movies, which I think is a tremendous feat on his part and goes to show why he's so protective of this franchise. I'm definitely on Team Sly when it comes to his beef with producer Aaron Winkler, who's just trying to milk these characters in these movies for all they're worth. Give my man his rights back. He only sold them for $1. He can sell them back for $1. I'm sure he's got $1. Now brace yourselves. My favorite mainline Rocky movie has got to be Rocky IV. I just love the campy style. The humor is hilarious. There's some real emotional heft to some of those scenes. You know which one I'm talking about. I won't spoil it, even though it came out like 30, 40 years ago. So I'm pretty sure I watched all of the first 6 Rocky movies all in a row. So I got to say, after watching these characters grow, Rocky, his beautiful, lovely, supportive wife, Adrian, and that little prick of a brother-in-law, Paulie. God, that guy sucks. I mean, these guys are all great. They're such iconic characters. It really was just so much fun, even in Rocky V, when it takes a real downturn in its quality. It was a rough time for Rocky, but he really swung back with Rocky Balboa, which was honestly really emotional. And I think it really nailed the landing for the saga before Creed, of course, came and topped them all. So after all that, walking into Creed 3 in theaters, I felt like I was walking into the ring myself. I had all this history, decades of films that I just binged in a week. There was a real sense of finality to watching Creed 3, even if they might make a 4th one. I kind of hope they do. Maybe they'll get Sly to come back, because I think his absence in Creed 3 was definitely a void that just cannot be filled. Thankfully, there was only one Marvel movie that came out during my 100-day challenge, and it was nearly the one to end them all. In my eyes, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania marks itself as the worst Marvel movie to come out. The first Ant-Man was solid. It was something new. It was smaller scale, smaller stakes, really funny. Paul Rudd is just such a gem. I think the second Ant-Man was a bit of a downgrade. I wouldn't say it was a good film, but it was entertaining in a way that Marvel movies can be. But the third one just marks a new low for this 32 movie franchise. You know, I just watched Transformers a couple days ago. The original one came out over 16 years ago, and the CGI in that movie is across the board better than anything you could see in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I mean, it is gross. It looks like garbage. The dialogue sounds like it was written by an AI. The performances are all so phoned in. And I mean, establishing the new big bad in an Ant-Man movie, just a bad idea. This is one of those movies that I just can't talk about very much because it's just giving it too much credit. It doesn't need any more airtime. It needs to be left in the past. We'll never need to talk about it ever again. Now, in a cinematic franchise that doesn't have superheroes but does sport superhuman stunt work, the John Wick series expanded to a 4th film. Stuntman turned director Chad Stahelski has done the impossible and injected fresh life into a series that has totally redefined the action genre. I know a lot of people say Tom Cruise is our last big movie star, but if I had to put money on anybody, my money would go on Keanu Reeves. Not only does Keanu not come with all that Scientology baggage, but his John Wick series has totally revitalized the action genre. Revisiting chapters 1 through 3 really made me appreciate just how lucky we are that we've gotten to experience these groundbreaking action films in our lifetimes and basically watch the entire genre be redefined by these John Wick movies. Apart from being some of the best action movies ever made, they also make pretty much any other action movie that has come out in the last decade look like absolute dog water. I mean, have you seen the movies these Russo brothers have been making? Red Notice? The Gray Man? I mean, they're not even real movies. Like, what are they doing? Chapter 4 is nearly the best of the bunch, but I do have a soft spot for the first film. It's simple, it's straightforward, no frills story, and some of the best stunt work in the franchise. as a whole. This latest chapter does sport a lot of incredible stunt work. I mean, who could forget that overhead dragon's breath scene? I mean, that's still living in my head rent-free pretty much daily. There was the moment when they turned the Arc de Triomphe into a full-blown war zone, and the hilarious climax with John fighting up all those stairs. But also, I want to know where they got those bulletproof suits from, because they're so suave, and I could really use one. As fun as all these big Hollywood blockbusters are, they really don't give you a lot to chew on, apart from the spectacularly bloody visuals. So when I saw a local theater was doing a little 2022 retrospective and bringing back some old movies, I noticed one in particular that really caught my attention, and that was Korean auteur Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave. I originally streamed Decision to Leave in 2022 when it came on Mubi, but I remember watching that and just thinking, there has never been a movie that has looked quite as special as this. He did win Best Director at Cannes last year, and if you've seen this movie, then you know why. Because there is a certain aesthetic to the film, the visuals, the cuts, the transitions, the framing. I mean, it is just all a masterclass in how to make a movie look spectacular. It's really hard to put into words just how it looks. I think once you've seen it, you'll understand, but there's just something about it visually that is so striking, and it probably is the most visually appealing movie I've ever seen. Now, of course, you can't just watch one Korean film. You watch one, you gotta watch at least 4 or 5. And so after watching Decision to Leave a second time, I thought I'd pick out a couple of Director Park's other movies. So I landed on The Handmaiden, which came out, I think, in 2016, and it just made me think how silly I am and how foolish that this guy has been making movies that look like the way they do, and I just haven't been watching them. Like, if you haven't either, what's wrong with you? I mean, there's something wrong with me, obviously, but you can fix this problem right now. Turn this video off. Go watch a Park Chan. So after The Handmaiden, I may have gotten a little sidetracked and homie hopped on over to another Korean auteur, one we're all probably familiar with by now, director Bong Joon-ho. I had a cousin who was interested in Memories of Murder, and, you know, I can't pass up on an opportunity to watch his best film, don't argue with me, and after which I also watched The Host, which I had never seen before, another film featuring Song Kang-ho, delivering an absolute powerhouse performance. That marked 2 certified Bong rips and 2 masterpieces in my mind. The dude just doesn't miss. I don't know how he does it. So it was at this point that I realized the 100th day was fast approaching, and I began to have a bit of anxiety about it. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to pick a fitting film to mark the occasion, and I remember getting home from work on the 100th day of the year and sitting on the couch for about an hour, bouncing between ideas. Maybe I should watch a classic that I hadn't seen, something I've been missing out on for decades and just haven't gotten around to. Or, you know, I could rewatch a favorite like Grand Budapest Hotel or Dune 2021. Well, inevitably, I managed to push all my anxiety aside and just pick a damn movie. Now, you may laugh at what I ended up picking for my 100th movie, or you may be one of those many people that consider this film one of your favorites. That is The Big Lebowski. That's right, I had never seen it. Now I have, and it was a treat. I would love to know what John Goodman was taking during this production, because that man is firing on all cylinders all the time. He had to have been slipped something in his coffee or his donuts or whatever he was consuming, because that was a performance unlike any I've ever seen. He had me laughing. He had me hiding behind my hands because he's so scary and intimidating. I mean, every line that guy says in that movie is an all-time classic. I think one of the most appealing things about The Big Lebowski is probably just the philosophy of the film. You know, the dude abides. That's all we can do really in this life. Just roll with the punches. At the beginning of the year, I set out to do 100 days in a row, and it's now well into June. We're past the 150th mark. Somehow my streak has survived moving. It survived new job. It survived many other things. I would love to take this all the way through to the end of the year and hit a nice 365-day streak. I'm not holding my breath. I'm going to do my best to keep this streak alive. You can follow along on Letterboxd, where I am very active. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it is the greatest app. I love it. I cannot live without it. So feel free to follow along. See if I make it to that 365-day mark. All I really care about is making it to November 3rd when Dune Part 2 comes out, because after that, I'll probably never need to watch a movie ever again. I can just watch Dune Part 1 and Part 2 on repeat for the rest of my life, and I will be very happy. Denis, I love you. Marty, I love you. If you made it this far in the video, I love you too. Feel free to subscribe. That'd be a big help. Drop a like, drop a comment. I'd love to get to know everybody, get a discussion going in the comments. Hopefully, I'll be back soon. I have a couple videos planned, not many, but I'm excited to see what the future holds. So, peace.